I'm gonna start, right? So if I file new, start a new part. Before I do that, I'm gonna go to Tools, and I have this Equations command. So what that does is it creates a mathematical equation or link between whatever dimension I want to add. So global variable, so I'm going to call this, let's say, let's do width. I'm going to call it width, and I'm going to, let's say I'm going to say it's that with whatever I call that. It can be variable A, or it can be B or C. I'm gonna, so I'm in millimeters, so I'm gonna do 100 millimeters, right? Hit OK. Now I have a global variable that I can use when I assign dimensions. So let's go in. If I start a sketch on my top plane, right? Gonna start with a center rectangle. So as we progress through this course, if I'm starting a sketch or something, I'm gonna breeze through it. I'm gonna assume everyone can do the basics, right? I don't want to waste too much time. So let's say I want this to be, let's say 250 millimeters. I want my width to be driven by the equation I created, right? So if I click equals, I can either write it in, or I can go to my global variables and assign that. And so the advantages of using equations, right? Its properties are linked. The disadvantages is I can't go in and change that. It's related to an equation or a global variable, right? So I can't go in and change that as fast as I would have if I just wrote 100 in, right? It's fully defined. So I'm just gonna do, let's extrude. Let's do, let's say 25 millimeters. Again, I'm gonna start another sketch here. Do another center rectangle. But now I want to start thinking about, all right, my design intent. I want to link this cut with respect to the overall width of that base. So if I do, so I'm going to go to my smart dimensions. Again, I'm just like I would dimension this. If I do equals my width.
Question.
Yeah.
Is this only for this document? Only for this part?
Yeah. So
if you're building a ladder and you're doing different shaped rungs, it'd be a certain width and you throw all these different rungs in the middle?
Yeah, so if I do,
but it's only this document, it didn't change it
divide by
globally.
2, right? So I'll answer that in 1 second. So if I link this, right? I mean that 50, I didn't assign that 50. It's driven, it's linked to my global variable, which is my width, right? Whatever that width is, that cut is going to be that width divided by 2. Does that make sense? We start thinking about design intent, right? More advanced way to start and dimension our parts. Again, with more complex things, right? So it can be, that dimension can drive a lot of things. I mean, in the real world, one dimension, a lot of dimension can relate to one number or one dimension, right? One dimension can drive other features. Whether it's the whole diameter, right? So if I have a pin and I have a dowel, so if I want to link them, so if I change one, the other one automatically changes. I can just link those, you know. So right now, if I do, let's say, an extrude cut, again, it's fully defined. So if I do extrude cut, and I go to, let's say, 10 millimeters, again, I don't care what. Or I can do So my width was 100, so if I do width divided by 6, right? It's driven by that. So now, if I go in, if I go to tools, again, equations, if I change that, it tells me, okay, my D2 sketch 1 is my width, right? Sketch 2 is my width divided by 2, and tells me what the value is. So if I go in and I change this to 150, everything updates. And it's cut through because that's the width divided by 6 is more than my overall thickness. Does that make sense?
Do you always have to define a value? Or can it be
You can multiply, you can do.
I'm saying with the width. So if the width is, you make a width, like say X, so when you go in and change, you define it then, so that you define it as whatever number, and then obviously the rest of the other part will change because you defined it at 100 or 200. Do you have to go into the equations to change the value, or can you just smart dimension and everything will change about that?
So you won't, the thing about that, so I go back,
The width can't be a variable, it has to be a defined.
so I can't go in here and change what my width is.
Right.
I defined it in it's an equation, so I would have to go to my equations and change that.
Right, so in equations, could you set it as a variable, or you have to have it as a defined?
No. I can call that as A.
Right, okay, so then if you define A later in the sketch, it'll change throughout the whole part, because, as long as you make those equations.
All the
Yeah.
A's will change?
Yeah. So
How do you turn it off?
so right now it's equals, that dimension is equals that. I can say, I don't want it to be equals that, I want it to be 25. Again, it's not linked anymore to my width, it's just driven by a value that my input. So again, right now, if I go in, I can change that 25 or whatever that value I set.
Now, you were in your right click on the mouse when you did that.
Yeah, or you can go into a sketch 2, edit sketch, and we'll show that value. So again, I'm not trying to go over sketching and stuff. I'm trying to go over just the basic overview of utilizing equations in design intent. All right. So again, in advanced course, we need to start thinking about, okay, how should I model this part, and what can I link?
Could be dangerous.
I mean, it's yes and no.
Yeah.
It's super powerful, right? I mean, with more complex geometries, and one value can drive. So on the CSWA exam, it's gonna say, it's gonna ask you, it's gonna give you variables. And the first part of the question is gonna say, okay, this value, this dimension is 25 millimeters, this dimension is 10 millimeters, this dimension is A. And it's gonna define what A is. So we'll say A is 100 millimeters, okay? So, and what that does, if your sketch is fully defined, for the second part, it's gonna go and say, hey, go change A, B, and C, and give me what the mass is. So if you change that value and everything is built correctly, and your geometry can regenerate correctly, that second part of the question will take you no more than 5 seconds. I mean, I can say A is 100 millimeters. B is A divided by 2. C is A times 2, parentheses divided by B, right? We can get as crazy as we want. But again, everything is driven by a mathematical equation instead of just an input. Again, start thinking about more that design intent. When should we use this? Right? With more complex parts that I know that my overall length is going to be or my width is always gonna be my length divided by 2, right? And then if I know there's a slot that has to be proportional to the overall length and width, that's when you start thinking about that stuff. And I mean, I went over the basics, right? So I can